So, Claire, lovely to see you again, and thanks for coming for another supervision session. And I know we've had a bit of a chat, but just tell me, well, what's the topic? What are we going to focus on today?
Yeah, thank you. So I thought it would be really useful to focus on working with clients who have ADHD.
Mm,
And the reason that that would be useful to me is that I've had three clients recently tell me that they have ADHD, and it's not something that I know a lot about, although I feel like it's becoming better spoken about in the
mm,
media, and it's people are far more open than perhaps they used to be. I mean, I had a family member who had ADHD as a child, and nobody knew about it. Whereas
mm,
now, at least, I think it's something that's part of the conversation. But considering as a coach what it is that the journey that we're encouraging people to go on, and what some of the symptoms are that some of my clients are telling me about, I'm
mm.
just wondering how I can best support without over supporting, help keep accountable without overdoing, and be sensitive to it. Acknowledge without embarrassing, and they've been forward and clear with me. But the fact that I now have three clients who've told me about it, I imagine there's more to come. So I'd like to support them as best as I can whilst learning a bit about it myself.
Okay. And with those three, are you all like, have you started? Have you gone beyond contracting? Have you had coaching sessions with each or some of them?
Yeah, good question. So, one, I have, they wanted a 6 sessions, and we've done the 6 sessions, and she has now said to me that she wants to have ad hoc sessions, but we haven't started that yet. Um, the one I've had as a client for a little while, also did the kind of 6 sessions and then has enjoyed having a session every kind of 3 to 4 weeks. And one's new. I've only had one session with them so far. And that person feels a bit more pronounced perhaps than the other two, just in the way in which the contracting went and the way in which the first download session went. So three in three different places. And all brilliant. And what's really lovely actually is that those who have had a little bit longer, they've still had great results. They feel quite transformed. So things have gone quite well. But I feel like I now that we've done that initial few sessions, there's more that I can help and give, and I don't want to lose that momentum. It's easier in the first sessions when they're closer together and you're on it and the power's going, and the, I want to make sure that I'm continuing to help them or give them the tools to help themselves.
Fab. Well, thank you for that, and that's really helpful, and it means that now I know you've got some experience to draw on that you've seen what it's like, so we can
Yeah,
talk about that a little bit.
yeah.
Fab. Um, and and so where do you want to be by the time we get to the top of the hour? Where do you want to be on this topic for you as a coach?
I think it'd be useful to be a bit more confident when somebody turns around and says, "Oh, I've got ADHD, and this is my ADHD, and this is it coming out right now." But and I hear it. I'd like to be able to, well, be more confident in my response.
Yes.
That I feel like I feel like I'd like to learn how to acknowledge and accept, um, without it. I don't want to sound patronizing. I don't want to bring too much attention to something. But they've shared this with me, and it's important to know about. So that's one thing is that kind of confidence to speaking to them. But I'm also just thinking, are there tools or are there things that I can bring to the table or techniques that I could use that can help somebody who has ADHD, who might be struggling with their time management, um, who might find themselves unexpectedly overwhelmed in places where they didn't expect to be overwhelmed, and help with that anxiety that they have. And I suppose that I'm not going to be there by the end of the session, but I'd like to start working on helping that more and understanding that better and having those techniques uh, to better support them.
Okay. Okay. So that sounds like three things, doesn't it? It sounds like your own confidence, the way that you want to interact with them and engage with them, but then also how you can support them with whatever their diagnosis means to them.
Yeah, I think that's really good. And the way that I interact feeds into confidence.
Yes.
When I see that I'm kind of behaving is not quite the right word, but responding in a way that feels like they understand, we understand each other.
Yeah.
The confidence naturally comes after that, I think. I want to be respectful and yeah, just a bit more knowledgeable. But yes, I think that summary of those three sections is quite accurate.
Okay, cool, great. Okay, thanks for that. Well, that's what we heard. And what about what do you think it like? What difference do you think it would make? You said that it seems to be more and more prevalent, more and more popping up. So if you really felt solid by the end of our hour, and then in a month or two working with this stuff, what difference do you think it would make to you as a coach?
Um, well, it won't throw me,
Yeah,
number one, because I think about kind of early coaching and the things that threw me at the beginning, and then when you have a bit of experience, like you see these things quite often, and it's part of the course. It's really comfortable. So it won't throw me. I think that I don't know if this is an okay thing to say or not, but it's supervision, so I'll say it. But like I'd like to be able to say that I have experience with working with people with ADHD, because as you say, it is becoming more prevalent. And even if it's not necessarily ADHD, some of those symptoms that sometimes diagnosed and sometimes not, they're quite strong in coaching clients. People come to you feeling overwhelmed and anxious and disorganized, and being able to say, well, I've worked with people and helped people like this, I actually think will also help me in my business.
yes.
Is that okay to say?
Is it okay to say? Yeah. And there's that question. I mean, I can hear what you're saying is like, we're not trying to exploit, look at us,
Of
it's
course not.
like the charity workers with look at us with these poor people that we support, are you?
No, of course not. But if anything, it's kind of the opposite. It's just like, don't be fearful. I'm comfortable with this, and you can be comfortable
Yeah.
with me, and therefore I can help more people.
Yes.
And I think it's important to say that when we have experience and knowledge of things.
Yes, agreed. Fab. All right. Well, it sounds like we got like quite a lot of rich and juicy stuff to get into, haven't we? And just as we start, just maybe just describe your feelings around this whole topic. How would you summarize those?
Um, a few things. As I say, a family member had it as a child, and I remember it being medicated, and I uh, spoke to him more recently, and he thought it was, misunderstood and shouldn't have been medicated, and he felt like he was, labeled and put in a box. And as I say, it was those times when perhaps it was less well known, and it was more of a finger pointing. I really don't want to make anyone feel the way that he described himself feeling. Granted, he was a teenager when that all happened, but I'm sensitive to that. So I suppose there is a sensitivity around it, because actually I knew somebody who suffered as a child and into adulthood, and perhaps wasn't given the right support because it was not as well known. So that's something that I think I'm sensitive to at the moment. But also, I think as a coach, one of the things we talk about is I'm not the one doing the work. It's the coachee doing the work. I'm there to support and guide and help and discuss and whatever. I'm there for all those exploratory things, but I can't do the work for you. And when I had somebody the other day say to me, so they didn't do. I sent out a questionnaire before I start my coaching, after the initial conversation, but before the main coaching starts, and she didn't get around to doing it. First time I've actually had somebody who didn't do that. And she came really flustered to the session and really apologetic. And then it's like, and that was, I've got ADHD, and I just, my time management is terrible. My organization is terrible. And how important it is. And I was just like, how I said to her, actually, we had a really great first session. And I think if anything, interestingly, she then went off and she sent me back the questionnaire within 2 hours of our first
Okay.
session. Really interesting. And it made me think, okay, well, perhaps if perhaps that's a better way round. Perhaps it's like too overwhelming to do something in the beginning, and I need to be more flexible in some of my practices. And I think I was flexible in my wording of it. But I think I've never had somebody not send that back before. So it didn't send me back my terms of business either. So that was a little bit uncomfortable for me. Because I didn't have a printer and it was all too much. And is there a way around it? So they ended up emailing me with a confirmation that they were happy with the content of the terms of business, which I felt comfortable with. But so I suppose that, so I think in my head, so one is the experience with my family member when they were younger. I want to be sensitive to that. And the other thing is what kind of flexibility or boundaries do I shift slightly to help ease that process? Maybe at the beginning when you take a client on, and then, as you say, there's a lot of stuff, but then it's like, how do you help them after they finish with you? Because the temptation to, I was hearing a lot of I need to have a lot of time pressure and I need to, be told what to do, and I need to, and there's a lot of kind of reliance on somebody else. And that's all very well when you're coaching at the beginning. But if the idea is that we have the ability, or we give our clients the ability to continue on this path themselves with habits that are manageable and realistic, how do we help them afterwards?
Yes.
So did that answer your question? I feel like I
Yes.
over answered your question.
Well, I've now got about 15 more popped in as like, oh,
Yeah.
I'm not quite sure which one's going to come up first. Well, thank you, but no, but there's a lot of things here, isn't there,
Yeah, yeah,
about sensitivity, doing the right thing for them, like an awareness of their needs, and the flexibility thing, and we'll get into all of those. One thing that I just wanted to say before we really start and get into the detail is, we're talking here July 2024. The coaching sector is working on this, right? And it's by no means finished and settled. In education, there's been proper work done for many, many, many years, and every school has a special needs department, as but and it's well established, and you have got professionals. Coaching, not so much. Coaching, it's there are ideas and things are popping up, and it feels very, very emergent. So if you said to me, where's the definitive source to go and read about managing ADHD clients in the coaching context, I'd say I don't know. And I've looked. We've been looking this year. We're writing some stuff, but it's not. It feels like it's still a bit emergent. I mean, so I'm telling you that not to sort of scare you or freak you out, but to know that actually this is not just a fact that you haven't gone and downloaded the best practice guide.
yeah.
That's not where we're at all. I mean, did you know that?
Um, I it's funny because part of the community that I work with some of the financial coaching community, somebody came in and did a talk on ADHD, and so in my head I was like, okay, so there is an acknowledgement of this, and an acknowledgement that there are different ways of working. Unfortunately, I missed the meeting, which is frustrating. But I suppose in a way and I thought that there might be some reference,
Yeah.
and some exploration. It sounds like it is becoming, and it is doing, but maybe just a bit behind. But it's interesting, even the schools, yes, you're right, they all have the send whatever in the schools, but quite a lot of the time it's incomplete, and it's everybody's situation. It's not like ADHD is a title and then you're this way.
Yeah.
It doesn't work like that. So I think it's all a work in progress. So that doesn't surprise me. I love that you're writing some stuff though, because I just think the more we explore it's here, it's around. There's lots of people who have it and live with it and thrive with it. Yeah. So if there isn't anything, I think you should write it.
Well, I think, and what I found quite interesting is that it's not obvious, So Sue and I and the team, Sue was an ex-head teacher, has worked a lot in this area. We're having to look around and have to really think about it before we put some things together, because it's not obvious, it's not evident, and we have to draw on the evidence base as well. Yeah. So I think I think what you'll find is if you keep alert to what's going on over the next couple of years, more definitive statements from the coaching bodies will come out, and there will be more, there'll be better guidance. It feels very, very early days, or these sort of what I would call like these discovery webinars, when like the one that you've said, in Wise Monkey, that's what would be. Someone will come along, they've done a bit more work than the rest of us, and so they know a few things, and it's tips and tricks rather than, we're going to get to more sort of regulated guidelines.
Yeah, I get that, but I do think that, and don't get me wrong, I regulated guidelines they have their place and they're very, very useful. But because it is just such a moving landscape when it comes to this, and because it's so personal, sometimes things like the tips and tricks are more useful because then I as a coach can keep on my toes. I can recognize certain patterns and help that way. Sometimes the regulated stuff feels a little bit restrictive sometimes.
Yeah.
So as I say, it has its place and it's useful, but actually I'm more interested in other people's experiences of it and learning from them.
Cool. Okay. Fab. Thank you for that. So I was wondering before we'll start exploring a bit about what's going on in those sessions and what it's like and what you need. But I was wondering from like talking about the flexibility, and this is something we've thought about actually, is like on your booking forms, do people have a space to say this, to say, they have got any diagnosis, they've got a learning need that might impact how the coaching is? Do you have something like that?
No,
You should.
actually. No, I don't. And as you say it, if it was just one client, I may not have thought about it, but the fact that it's been three almost in succession.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean, maybe I've had clients who haven't told me.
Yeah.
As well. So no, I actually like that very much.
Okay. Okay.
And just again, my hesitation is how would one word it? Like, I suppose it's like, is there any neurodiversity that you would like to make me aware of?
Yes.
As to do you have?
Yes. Yeah. And I mean we're just rewording ours at the moment, and we've noticed people who during training say, yeah, I have got ADHD. But when you our wording on our booking form is a bit more generic, have you got a specific learner need that might impact, your involvement in the program? And the people who say they have ADHD too in particular, there was nothing written on the booking form. So maybe that was one of those things. They're not quite ready. They don't want to say it in that environment. So you're right, being sensitive to how we phrase that on the booking form, and you can't guarantee. Do you imagine that the opportunity to tell you in advance might be useful for your coaches, or actually you think they might prefer to wait until they tell you till they meet you?
I don't know, actually. I don't know. All of them told me almost straight away.
Okay.
And there is a big difference between the rapport that you have, even if it's over Zoom, but the rapport that you have by seeing somebody's face and understanding somebody's reaction to filling in something on a piece of paper.
Yeah.
I do wonder if that client I just told you about, the newer client who decided to do the questionnaire, not decided to, but ended up doing the questionnaire after our first session. I wonder if she was more able to do it because she'd connected with me. Yeah. So she felt like she was talking to me.
Yeah.
I do wonder that. It's actually just making me think. I almost want to ask them, would you have felt more comfortable if this had been brought up, or are you just comfortable? Because I think people are more comfortable talking about these things.
Yes.
It's not taboo.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Okay. Worth pondering, right?
Yeah, it's worth thinking about. But even the fact that you've said to me that you're rewriting your initial forms as well, like I'm thinking I actually haven't rewritten mine really. I tweak it a little bit after having a discovery call so that just to ensure that it's all as sensitive as I hope it to make it sensitive to the individual. But I haven't really changed it that much, so it's made me think that might be a good call because I'm more experienced now, so I don't necessarily need to stick with the same questions. And I was actually thinking some of the questions don't represent the way that my coaching seems to be going.
Yes.
And the people that I'm attracting. So just as a bigger point, revisiting that would actually probably be a very useful stage. And then I can incorporate something about you know, the learning or neurodiversity or something within that.
Okay. Okay. Well, and how nice. We're only 20 minutes in, but you've already got
Yeah,
something you can
I'm
do.
actually, I don't have my notebook, so I'm just going to scribble it on my screen so I don't forget it. Because I forget things very quickly. Okay, thank you. Done. Uh, I'd actually quite fancy doing that.
Yeah.
Great, done. Thank you.
Fab. And now I wanted to ask about the like what do you know already? I know and particularly I think what I'm interested in is not how much you know, but really like what steps have you taken to inform yourself in this last year or so, since you've had these clients about specifics of ADHD? Have you felt like I must go and find out everything and read chapter and verse and interview people? Have you thought I'll pick it up as you go along? Have you wanted to do a load of stuff, but you haven't had the time? Where have you been on the sort of understanding ADHD journey
Mm.
yourself?
Um, I'm slightly ashamed to say that I'm not as far as I would like to say that I am.
Yeah.
I think that it's come up quite a lot for not for my children, but in schools. And
Yeah.
I've got two teenage children. So in one of whom has anxieties, which is actually a very common ADHD. Well, actually, so they say sometimes it's anxiety, or sometimes it's a different anxiety. It's not, if you have anxiety, you have ADHD. But it's prompted conversations that I've had with friends whose children have been diagnosed with ADHD or in fact some autisms, or somewhere on the autism globe. um, and so I feel like I've had conversations with it in terms of young people. I don't think I've really explored it very much, other than speaking to the family member that I've told you about. And I do, I speak to him quite often. He lives abroad, but when he comes home, we chat, or we're very close. Um, I don't think I've spoken to anybody else, adult,
Yeah.
who has experience of it. And even as I'm saying it, that kind of surprises me about myself, because usually the first thing that I do is I go off and I learn, and think, oh, I better go and qualify, get another qualification in something else, and that's my thing. But I think maybe I've shied away from it a little bit because I've not known how to deal with it, and the sessions haven't been unsuccessful as a result. It's not like I'm coming to you now and being like, oh my God, this was a horrendous session, and it's not. I just feel like there's always more you can do. You can always be better and do better, and no, I probably haven't gone down the route particularly thoroughly in terms of adults. Um, and if I'm honest, I don't know where I'd look.
Mm.
I'm when you look at these things, when you Google search them, it's too generic, and I haven't done a search on coaching an ADHD, and then as you said, there's probably not very much out there at the moment anyway, or it's progressing. I guess part of the session today was me wanting to say to you, so what do you do when you have a client like this? Tell me your tricks.
I mean, it does bring up a really interesting question, doesn't it? Is when someone says that they do ABC, or they behave in ABC way, or they're whatever, like to what extent do we need to go and find out that, and perhaps here with a special need, there feels like that there's more important work to do than if someone says that I don't know, they're a type A personality, or something within more the normal frame.
Yeah.
But I'm wondering, how much do you think that for something like this we need to go and find out and really understand this a bit more?
You see, the thing is that the way in which it's been described to me, and it's been consistent with all three clients. First of all, they think themselves as very disorganized.
Mm.
However, they have been so organized in so many ways, and when they can recognize that in themselves, that's kind of quite a eureka moment that but disorganization is a big one, and time management is a big one. And I have worked with a lot of clients on being organized and being better at time management, not just in the kind of financial coaching world, but when you're financial coaching, you're not just talking about money, you're talking about all sorts of things that's affecting their lives or the stage that they're at. So I suppose because it's come up as being disorganized or not great with time management, I felt like, well, I'm quite good at those things. And we've found ways that have worked, which is great, except that I have this niggling feeling that when I'm not around, they won't continue.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, my concern. I think that's my oversight.
Yeah.
And I think we can all, when we've got a buddy, it's like when you're training at the gym, it's easier to do these things when you've got a buddy, helping you cheerlead. When they're not there anymore, how do you stay focused? How do you stay organized? How do you manage your time? How do you procrastinating? Massive one. Although we all do that to an extent, of course. But yeah, I think that it's weird because I said at the beginning that I want to have more confidence, but I think that the areas of the ADHD that they've brought up, I feel relatively confident in when it comes to coaching. But then I'm worried that I'm missing a trick, because if I'm working one way with somebody who doesn't have ADHD and those, tools that we're discussing are really helpful, and then I'm working with somebody who has ADHD and they work temporarily and then stop, I'm missing something there, aren't I? That I need to understand better. I can't even remember the original question. I think I've gone off on a tangent now.
It was interesting. It was how much you found out about what's out there,
How much?
how much
Yeah.
do we need to be informed, and do we need to be informed about it?
Okay. Well, then, do we need to be informed? I can certainly be better informed. I don't think we need to be experts. And they're not coming to me to solve ADHD. They're coming to me for something else. It's just that's something that's running in the background. And I know I can do better.
Okay. Okay. So I mean, this brings up yet again about another 10 questions, but the most recent one from what you just said, yeah, they haven't come to me to work on their ADHD, but it's present in the room. So talk a bit about that, because I think that seems to be like a really important point, does it? That that's just part of their reality as opposed to the topics that they want to work on. So what are they coming to you with, if it's okay to say?
Yeah, so it's funny because I'm primarily a financial coach, but what ends up coming out of these, even just the initial sessions, they're not coming to me just for money management skills. It tends to be almost always some kind of life change, transition zone, which is very common, of course. That's often why people might seek out coaches. So it may be. So one of them, for example, is winding down a business and wants to set up a business. There's obviously financial implications in that. They also want to buy a home. They also want to, they're trying to make sure that they balance their kind of social spend and time with work time. But it's funny because I know it was the first time that I really noticed perhaps some of the ADHD, the brain's kind of like that going at 100 miles an hour with lots and lots of different things happening. I always talk about the initial session being like a download session, and I'm actually not sure I said almost anything for the first half an hour. The odd interjection, encouraging kind of deeper question perhaps, but so little. And that's when she was telling me about the ADHD and that and not being able to get things done. And if you're looking at big stuff like changing careers, and if she wants to, there was a property consolidation and to move so that she could move home, move her house, and what else was there? There was a big thing about social dilemma, and it's very kind of all or nothing. So she felt like she was over socializing, so she's put a thing out saying no socializing whatsoever. So she says no to everything, every wedding, every whatever. So it's very kind of one way or the other. And that's when it was like, okay, so the ADHD stuff is very strong, very prevalent. And she talked about it being very strong for her. Whereas I suppose the other two weren't talking about it it didn't talk about it in a way that it was an enormous influence. It's more like some of the later diagnoses of something like ADHD. It's almost like it gives an understanding of why you exhibited certain behaviors over a period of time. There's almost a comfort in that. Whereas this particular client I'm referring to, she obviously almost was fighting against it. So yes, she didn't come to me to talk about ADHD, but it's definitely playing a big part in kind of, well, she felt that she was totally stuck. Yes. I actually don't think she was. And we talked about that a little bit and recognizing some of those small wins, which was really lovely. Yes. For her, because she felt a little less hopeless. Yes. But I can see that in her mind, it's a big influence. Yes. As opposed to something that's running in the background. So I'm just thinking, how am I going to help her over this process where I'm hoping that she's going to feel empowered to take the reins, to do these big things, these big life changes, yes, whilst kind of being aware that she's finding some of these ADHD tendencies challenging, yeah, and keeping her stuck.
Yes. Thank you. So there's a lot, isn't it? And the idea that actually it is different for each coachee of yours. Are they diagnosed or are they self-diagnosed? Because I know that can be a thing as well, that people
yeah,
they've received the adult, and it's adult. Is it adult diagnoses? Like they've been told.
Adult. Yes, and relatively recent.
Okay.
Relatively recent. As I say, it's I'm not quite. I didn't explore why they chose to seek that, but again, they're all. Oh no, they're not all parents. No, they're not all parents. I was about to say, a bit like me, like my knowledge comes from being in the schools. But so I don't know what it was that caused them to seek the diagnosis.
Okay.
But yes, they are all officially diagnosed. Although it's a good point though, because I did actually have somebody else say to me, I wonder if I have some kind of neurodiversity.
So, and this is helpful because, I mean, one of the things that has happened is you can now get an adult diagnosis and you can get support, like, quite comprehensive support. You can get funding, you can get a coach. Did you know, government paid coach for ADHD? So there is quite a lot of external support, particularly if you're a business owner as well. This idea that that it's likely to impact on the way that you run a business. So there are various levels of support available. And you're not their mentor, but it's quite nice to know actually that there are things that they can and could be doing.
I was just going to say, just tell me a bit more about the coach that the government provides.
So it's a funding so that you can get coaching. So you choose your coach, okay, and you get it covered. I'll share some stuff about it afterwards. It is relatively new, and obviously I've looked into it to see how you get on the coaches.
I was going to say, like, I assume they have a list of coaches that you can choose from.
Yes, I think so. Really so there is some stuff around that. So, I mean, I think the reason that I was asking some of these things is just trying to understand, like, the context of you within this coaching arrangement. So let's talk about you. You've got these clients in front of you behaving in a certain way, telling you certain things, sort of setting another secondary narrative, right, to just them as a coaching client. So what do you do well? What do you, when you review your coaching, you think, well, I'm handling this well because I do what?
I listen well. And I pick up on non-verbal cues well, which also makes me think a little bit about that questionnaire, and the usefulness of it and when you use it. And I think I'm quite good at reading in between the lines. I know when I was in training with you, that I had this tendency to kind of almost over summarize. And I think I've got much better at pulling out and simplifying some of the jumble and the overwhelm that can come out.
Yes.
It's all, you know, especially in the early sessions when there's this, you know, people haven't had this space before held for them, and I can understand that being overwhelming, but it's such a lovely opportunity, and I think that I create a warm environment even across the screen, even if I'm not seeing people face to face, that allows for that openness, and perhaps that's why they've been open and told me about some of the challenges of ADHD as well. So I think I think I've said this, but I think I am quite sympathetic and I'm quite empathetic. But then, you know, the empathy, it starts to go too far sometimes. And that can lead me into worry and overthinking myself.
Yes.
Because, you know, the last thing I want to do is offend or misspeak without realizing that I have. And especially if I'm able to sense some of the undercurrents or some of the non-spoken emotions or responses or reactions that's going on, I don't want to. I said something to somebody. I don't actually know if this person has ADHD or not, and I said something in an email, and I reread the email 10 times, and I cannot see what I said, which might have caused any overwhelm. But I had an email back saying, I just need to sit on your email a moment, it's really overwhelmed me. And it was literally a few sentences kind of congratulating the journey so far and acknowledging and then looking forward to the future. It was not, but I must have said something. And that kind of frightens me a little bit, because even I am genuinely, I'm like a really genuine coach. I just want to help. And the idea of creating any kind of overwhelm rather than helping de-overwhelm, underwhelm, whatever. reverse the overwhelm, simplify. You know, that, like, the idea that I could possibly cause anything that makes somebody feel worse, that actually that frightens me. That feels like an enormous responsibility. Somebody has been so open and so brave to say, now is my time and I want to make changes. And maybe my natural over awareness and the ability to almost read and see into things can sometimes go too far, both in terms of myself and my own emotional responses. But it's only happened once with this one person, but it's really kind of given me a bit of a jolt. Like, oh gosh, even when I think I'm responding in the most respectful, most helpful way I can still cause something. And I suppose now that I have clients who specifically told me this is a challenge that I have, it's so important to me that I hear and see and listen and ask in a way that it's not, I don't want it to be contrived. I don't want to have, you know, questions in my back pocket. That's not how we work as coaches. As coaches, it's natural. We listen, we hear, and we have the experience to ask those deeper, useful questions, or just gentle, you know, what else style questions. But goodness me, I don't want to hurt anyone or upset anyone or cause damage. Of course, I hope I'm not causing damage, but I don't want some of my positive things, the things I'm really proud about myself as a coach, and the way that I am. I'm friendly and I'm chatty and I'm informal, and I want those things to continue to be positive. I don't want to end up stepping on a toe without noticing. But then we're getting a little bit deeper into some of my insecurities and things that, you know, I want I want to avoid or improve on.
Well, you used some really big adjectives there, didn't you? Like, the overwhelm and frightened and the sensitivity. And I mean, I'm asking this because it might not be true, but it certainly is true for me at the moment. Did you notice some sort of physical tension or reaction when you were just talking these last few minutes? I mean, I'm churning away here. What did you notice?
Um, I I notice when I talk about um, I use the word frightened. I use that word purposely. Actually, I think it is a very very big word, but I just have such a deep want to be helping and to be
Yeah.
moving forwards that the idea that I don't does cause some kind of physical tension. Um, I feel tension in my shoulders and I feel it in my chest when I feel tension. And uh, talking about like that email response that I had,
Yeah.
that creates a tension for me because it was so unintentional.
Yeah.
And it's not like I write an email quickly and send it off. I'll reread it 5 times before I send it just to double check, So it's like, what did I miss and how did I miss it? Um, and it feels a bit rubbish. Like I think I'm good at what I do. And I have such wonderful, I, I'm humbled and privileged to see such incredible transformations in people. And it drives me. It's so it's just such a beautiful thing to be a part of. Um, and then yeah, so I think that when I talk about the frightened or the overwhelmed, and we all get frightened or overwhelmed. I'm not special in that. We all have that at some point. There's things we that make us feel that way. Um, I do churn. You use the word churn. It does make me churn a bit. And it's the kind of thing that I will still be thinking about it when I go to bed at night, and I'll probably still think about it in the morning too.
Yes.
This email that I'm mentioning is probably about a month ago, and it still bothers me because I feel like I did something wrong and I don't know how or why. And that physically just no, tense, tight,
But
definitely.
yeah, I don't want to be saying sort of rescuey type of things, but I'm also really, really wondering about this. Is like if you've got and the language that's popping up for me when you're talking is like this duty of care and this was sensitivity, and also this deliberateness. I mean, look, you brought to supervision, right? This very topic about caring for these other people. Is it possible? Like, is it possible to never, get it wrong? As in, like, is it possible? Could you get a briefing from your client? Like, tell me everything that I might do to get it wrong, to piss you off, to whatever, and then to not do any of those things. Is it possible? This is a massively leading question, obviously, but asking
Do
that
you
anyway.
know what's so interesting about it, Charlie, is that I felt, as you asked it, I felt a almost a lump in my throat, not quite. And what that is, and I, I think as coaches, I think we naturally are very self-aware, and we are always working on ourselves as well. And I know that I have perfectionist tendencies, and I see it, and I call it out in other people, and work, we work on it because there is no such thing as perfection. There is no, it doesn't, it doesn't exist. But the tendencies do.
Yeah.
That that behavior, and I think that the answer is no, we can't always get it right. But does that mean that we don't want to always get it right? Because it feels really really rubbish
Yeah.
when you feel like you didn't get it right.
Yeah.
And I think I'm not great at that. I'd love to be like, okay. I actually spoke to a colleague about it because it really bothered me, and they said to me, look, the intention was good. You came from a good place. You don't know what the response is. You can't get into their mind, what states their mind is in at a certain time, whatever it might be. It's okay to let it go. It was like a permission.
Yeah.
And I didn't take that. I was
Yeah.
like, well, no, actually, it's not okay to let it go. I did something wrong and I need to understand why. And I think that, as you say, it kind of feeds into this. It's like, I don't want to make a mistake with clients who come to me quite vulnerably and told me something, whether it's the ADHD or, our coaching clients have a vulnerability. I don't want to screw that up.
Yeah.
Uh, but in answer to your question, no, you can't always get it right, but I do want to.
Yeah. And is any of all of this going to influence like how I suppose how you can relax into, you talked about being confident, like relax into your own confidence and your ability to be sensitive in these situations?
Um, you just reminded me of something. So I talk to clients about visual cues, um, because I think they can be really useful. Not, depending on what it is that resonates with the individual. And you saying that to me in terms of confidence, it's like I need to remind myself that of my intentions are good. Um, and I'm well trained and I'm experienced. I'm not, and I do sit in confidence
Mm.
more than I don't.
Yes.
And I need to a visual cue of some sort for me to help me not derail myself when a curveball is thrown, would actually be quite helpful because yes, I am confident that I am confident in that my intentions are good, and I am confident that my techniques are good. Things can always be improved. Um, and I need to remind myself to not be derailed.
Yes.
I think that's the thing. And to educate myself. Like I like, you asked me that question earlier in the session about whether or not I kind of looked into adult ADHD, and I haven't really. And I'd like to go off and do that.
Yes.
Because goodness, I talk about financial literacy and financial education in terms of confidence. I have people coming to me with lack of confidence over money, but it's so often a lack of knowledge that feeds into that lack of
Yeah.
confidence. Um, so I'm going to do two things. I'm going to I like visual cues. I've got a few behind my screen here that help me. I want something that's going to remind me to kind of to not lose too much confidence when things don't quite go according to plan. So I want to do that, number one. And number two, I want to research a little bit more into supporting adults with ADHD. I'm just going to write those two things down because memory is not my strong point. Thank you.
So there's lots, and we've opened lots of doors, and I'm not sure if we've closed them all. So you might find that there's still things that you're mulling away as things go on, as the day and the week goes on, with all of these things. But is there anything that feels outstanding to you? Any of the sort of the big sub themes of this ADHD thing that you're left thinking, well, we haven't covered that yet?
Only that, and we're not going to be able to cover this in the session. And I don't know if you can answer the question, but whether or not there are tools to help people after the coaching run has finished. Because though I do have clients who like to stay with me and then come in for like kind of maintenance sessions or whatever, I do tend to have clients that come to me for a fixed number of sessions and then go off into the world. And I suppose from the limited things that I understand about ADHD and some of the challenges that come for adults, I'd love to have some techniques that might help beyond working with me.
Yeah.
So like at the end they go off and they have things that that keep them on their paths.
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, you'll know very well, right, that I don't tend to do that. So my toolkit is I might not be the right person for it, but I think that in this context, I think it's a really good question because I think that if someone has had an adult diagnosis, it means that they are either engaged in trying to find out what this means and how they need to navigate life with this diagnosis, or they're not, but it's probably not a bad idea to do that. So I think there's something about if we, if you look at so what we teach, for example, an end of coaching program review session. How have you got on? What have you learned since day one? And how are you going to sustain the momentum? Now, with most clients, it's all good and it's all normal, and they say, well, I'll do this and I'll do that. And then you say, well, what about the obstacles when you get busy? They say, well, I'll do the other or I'll whatever. Right? Well, maybe what you could do is think about that end of session, end of program review, and bring the ADHD into the room with permission. It's like, right, most clients either manage to sustain the momentum themselves or they have their dips, and that's normal. But what about in your circumstances? What do you need? What do you want? What have you learned? What do you need to learn? So rather than thinking of yourself as the giver of the techniques for sustainability, think of yourself as a facilitator of them being able to help work out what the techniques would be.
Yeah. Do you know what I like about that? I'm just writing facilitator of techniques. That's, I've spoken to you before, in an earlier supervision session, I think about wanting to offer value.
Yeah.
And I suppose in that way, it's almost like I wanted like some parting shots, that mean then they can go off and here you go, here is your toolkit, and then off you go. But you're right, it's about being a facilitator. And what I like about that idea is also linking it to the fact that hopefully that question was in some of the initial correspondence or whatever, so that there it's almost like bookended. So there's acknowledgement, both sides with permission, rather than pretending it doesn't exist.
Yes. Yeah, and
Uh,
through sorry to interrupt there,
no,
but
no.
through today I've been thinking about, like, to what extent do you bring it into the room, like either in contracting or through the sessions, almost like, does it want to be a third party sitting in its own chair, as you might have, a normal coachee talking about their boss or their friend or their partner or whatever. Is it like this sort of the invisible third person? Or is that not, or do you not want that? And is it up to them to decide whether it's explicit discussions of it or just a bubbling away awareness? And I think it's the same in this last session.
Mm. But what's quite nice about what you're saying is, I'm just thinking about the three clients who come forward with it. One talks about it so much more than the others. And I suppose that I haven't given it much acknowledgement other than acknowledgement.
Yes.
So I haven't necessarily given an opportunity to bring it into the room or not.
Yes.
And I like the fact it's almost you're giving me permission. I don't have to shy away from that.
Yeah.
It's okay to give that option.
Yes. Yeah.
Like.
And that's a crucial word, right? It's the option, Do you want to, they've told you they've got a diagnosis, to what extent do you want to talk about it as part of the coaching? Loads, a bit, not at all, that's on them, isn't it?
Yeah, I think that's really good. I think because I don't feel hugely educated around the subject, that I naturally veer away from it, but I actually think I'd feel much more comfortable and confident by not making it into an elephant in the room, because it doesn't need to be.
Yes. Doesn't say that again. It doesn't need to be an elephant in the room. You don't have to say that again. I'm just saying it again.
Yeah, but it doesn't need to be. But I think by avoiding, by not giving the option of whether or not it's part of the coaching process,
yes,
could mean that it's an elephant. And the fact I'm bringing it to this session means that I've treated it like the elephant in the room.
So where is it now? We're coming towards the end, the last 5 minutes. So where is this elephant, and relating to your confidence and how you want it to work? Where are you at with this?
I actually feel a lot better because I don't feel fearful. I feel like with some of the actions that I've got for myself, I'm just looking at my notes, that's why my eyes are elsewhere. That's going to help in terms of building confidence. Confidence isn't a switch, is it? It's something that we kind of build on. I like the idea of giving the option of bringing it into the room or not.
Yeah.
And I enjoy the idea of the talking, if it has been in the room, talking about it at the end, and as you say, being the facilitator of the techniques as opposed to the creator, because it takes the pressure off of me trying to, scramble around to come up with something. Whereas actually, let's the client is the expert always and always, in all areas of themselves. So it's handing back the responsibility, but also the action taken to the experts, which helps me, so I don't need to come in as the expert in ADHD.
Yeah. Yeah. And thank you for sharing that, because I think that is really important. It's really easy, if we look at our coaching definitions, which all have the flavor of the client is the expert, because there's a diagnosis, we don't want to get sort of trapped, almost like we don't even notice we're suddenly trapped in like, oh no, they can't be the expert because they've got a diagnosis. Well, they're probably even more the expert, aren't they? They probably know their tendencies, 10 times better than most of the rest of us.
Yeah, I agree. Thank you. Yeah, really
useful.
useful.
So I know you've been scribbling away, typing up. How clear do you think and consolidated are those actions that you got?
Oh, they're very clear. I know exactly what I'm going to go off and do later when I've got a bit of time. And it's just, I know myself very well. I think we all know ourselves quite well, but I notice when I slip up in confidence. And I know that I have a tendency that I want to kind of, because of that wanting to bring value, I feel like I need to come in with, these swooping, dramatic, eureka moments.
Yes.
And that's not, it's not for me to come in with those.
Yes.
It's for me to, to help explore so that they have their own moments of clarity. And that helps that really helps on the when the confidence lacks, I think.
Well, thank you so much for that. And I mean, just to say that you asked me a bit about my approach and how I deal with it and so on. And I think that I think what I've been talking about today is how I'd approach. I know a bit about it, but I'm not an expert, and I do try and normalize it, I think, as much as I can. But probably that contracting and asking if they want to talk about it would come into it. But from the knowledge base, we will do work over these next couple of years. More will emerge, and I'll keep you informed. The things that we find out about, I'll let you know. And as and when we write things up, again, I'll let you know about that. So I hope that's okay.
I'd appreciate that. It'd be great. Thank you.
Sure. And your feelings as we come to the end of this, how do you feel?
I feel great. I really enjoy supervision. It's a bit like it's a space for me to share, isn't it? It's this wonderful kind of I'm being listened to, and it helps me explore things I feel like I come to you with something which wasn't really going to last an hour. Yeah. And now I'm here thinking, gosh, can we do a seminar on this and an extra course and sit and discuss it further, because there's so much. And I really appreciate that as this process, because you're asking me the questions, which is helping me explore further.
Well, thank you, and thank you so much for engaging. I think because we are recording this will be a really interesting topic for other coaches. That it's present, it's changing, it's evolving. I think most of us as coaches do wrestle with this and aren't quite sure. So I think that this will change, but I think this could be some really useful, interesting thoughts and processes for others. So thank you so much.
Oh, great.
As ever, I always really appreciate it.
Oh, I'm delighted. No, brilliant.
All right then. Well, listen, have a good day.
Thank you, and you.
Take care. Bye now.
Bye.